Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. Here is Mubashir Riaz. Today we are going to discuss our last topic of chapter number 3, which is about balanced and unbalanced forces. So as you can see that in this picture there are two portions. Number one, so in the above portion we can notice that there are two forces 300 Newton on each side. 300 Newton due left and 300 Newton force due right, and they are in balanced position. But in the lower portion of picture, we can observe that there are two unbalanced forces. 300 Newton due right, but 400 Newton force is acting due left. Since they are of unequal magnitude, so we can observe that they are in unbalanced position, especially those persons which are present on the right side, they are in unbalanced position. So in this topic, we will discuss about balanced and unbalanced forces. So what are called balanced forces and unbalanced forces? So to understand this balanced and unbalanced forces, we must know about equilibrium or balanced position. What is meant by equilibrium or what is balanced position? Equilibrium kya hai, balanced position kya hai? So you must know about this one. A body is said to be in balanced position if it is at complete rest or moving with uniform velocity. So these are two states, they must be satisfied. Number one, if object is at rest or it is moving with uniform velocity, then object is said to be in balanced position or it is said to be in equilibrium. For example, a metal block is present on the surface of a table. So in this case, this metal block experiences two forces. There are two forces. Force number one, it's a weight which is acting vertically downward. And there is another force which is called normal reaction force. And this force is acting vertically upward, perpendicular to that plane. So under the action of these two forces, because they have same magnitude but opposite direction, so this metal block remains at rest. So this is said to be a state of equilibrium, or it is called the balanced position. When this object is under the action of two balanced forces is at rest. There is another example. Let there is a car which experiences a number of forces and moving with constant velocity. And those forces are the weight of car, which is acting vertically downward, and the normal reaction force, which is acting vertically upward, and the force applied, which is also called driving force in forward direction. And there are two more forces. One is the air resistance and other is the friction between the tire surface and the road surface. So number of forces are acting on the single object, which is the moving car. So if these forces are balanced, if they cancel out each other's effect, then car tend to move with uniform velocity. So this is also an example of equilibrium or balanced position when object is moving with uniform velocity. So these are two examples. First one is when object is at rest, and other example when car is moving with uniform velocity. So what are balanced forces? Here are two types of forces called balanced forces and unbalanced forces. Balanced forces are those whose resultant is equal to 0. Suppose if more than two forces are acting on a single object, यानी एक ही object पे दो या दो से ज़ायद forces अगर act हो रही हैं, and if their sum is 0, if their resultant is 0, then such forces are called balanced forces. If sum of the number of forces acting on an object is 0, then object is said to be in equilibrium, and such forces are called balanced forces. For example, A metal block present on the surface of table. So in this example, there are two forces, normal reaction force and the weight of object. And since they are equal in magnitude, but opposite in direction, so they cancel out each other's effect, and this block remains at rest. So these forces are called balanced forces. Similarly, in second example, when car is moving with uniform velocity, so there should be this condition F, which is actually the applied force or driving force, and it is equal to sum of the opposing forces, which is air resistance and friction between the tire surface and road surface. So if this applied force, which is also called driving force, is equal in magnitude to air resistance and frictional force, then this car moves with uniform velocity. So F should be equal to sum of these forces, which are actually opposing forces, retarding forces. So F should be equal to sum of these forces. So here Fr is air resistance and small f is frictional force. Similarly, there is another example when a block is at rest on an inclined plane. For example, there is a block and this block is present on an inclined plane. So question rises that why it is in state of rest. ये ऑब्जेक्ट यहाँ रेस्ट की स्टेट में क्यों है, whereas it is present on an inclined plane, so why it is in state of rest. ये ऑब्जेक्ट यहाँ रेस्ट की स्टेट में क्यों है. So to understand this effect, we must know that how many forces are present over there. इस ब्लॉक पे टोटल फोर्सेस कितनी एक्ट हो रही हैं. So the number of forces acting on that block are: number one, weight, which is acting vertically downward. This is weight of block acting vertically downward. Other is normal reaction force, which is actually perpendicular to the plane. And normal reaction force and weight, they are making some angle theta with each other. They are not in along the same line. They are making some angle theta with each other. There is another force, which is frictional force between the block surface and that plane surface. So this is frictional force. So why this object is in state of rest under the action of these three forces? So you must know about the vectors addition method. Since we know that force is a vector quantity, so we can represent them and we can add them by using the vectors addition method. So this object would be in state of rest if sum of these forces, normal reaction force and weight, if sum of these two forces is equal in magnitude but opposite in direction to the frictional force, then object is said to be in state of rest. यानी इस ब्लॉक पर एक्ट होने वाली इन दोनों फोर्सेस का सम, जिसमें नंबर वन नॉर्मल रिएक्शन फोर्स and number two weight, their sum should be equal in magnitude but opposite in direction to this frictional force. So we can observe this by using vectors addition method. Here, this is a weight of that block acting vertically downward, and this is normal reaction force, and this one is their resultant. This force is the resultant. So we can notice that this force is opposite in direction to the frictional force. कि ये जो F parallel mention की हुई है, which is also draw here, this line is equal in magnitude but opposite in direction to this frictional force. So that's why this block is in state of rest. यानी उस ब्लॉक पर एक्ट होने वाली इन दोनों फोर्सेस का सम, नॉर्मल रिएक्शन फोर्स और वेट, इन दोनों फोर्सेस का सम इस फोर्स के इक्वल लेकिन अपोजिट डायरेक्शन में है. So that's why this block remains at rest. Hence we can say that these are balanced forces. Okay, sum of N and W is equal to small f. So these forces are also called balanced forces. What are unbalanced forces? So unbalanced forces are those whose sum cannot be zero, whose sum produces some resultant force. कि when number of forces are acting on a single object, कि जब बहुत ज़्यादा forces एक ही object पर act हो रही हों and they produce some resultant. So these forces are called unbalanced forces which produce some resultant. And what is the effect of unbalanced forces? Under the action of unbalanced forces, object will experience an acceleration. It will accelerate if there are unbalanced forces because they are producing some resultant, and according to Newton's second law of motion, if unbalanced force act on an object, it accelerates. So under the action of unbalanced forces, object will experience an acceleration. For example, if the sum of opposing forces is less than the driving force, then this car will accelerate. Okay, if driving force, in other words, we can say that if driving force is greater than the sum of opposing forces, which is air resistance and the frictional force, then car will accelerate. So under the action of unbalanced forces, object will accelerate. So these are two types of balance, two types of forces in the form of balanced forces and unbalanced forces. There is a question, and you have to solve this question regarding these unbalanced forces and balanced forces. A car of mass 1000 kg is accelerating at 2 meter per second square. There is a car whose mass is 1000 kg and this car is accelerating with an acceleration of 2 meter per second square. So find the resultant force acts on the car. आपने इसमें रिजल्टेंट फोर्स को कैलकुलेट करना है जो इस कार पर एक्ट हो रही है. एंड देयर इज सेकंड पार्ट, इफ द रेजिस्टेंस टू मोशन इज 1000 न्यूटन, यानी अगर एक अपोजिंग फोर्स इसी कार पे एक्ट होती है और वो 1000 न्यूटन है, देन व्हाट इज द फोर्स ड्यू टू द इंजन? So to produce the same acceleration, what is the required force by the engine? This is also be determined. So this is the question, and you have to attempt this question regarding this balance and unbalanced forces. Now we are going to start our next chapter, unit 4, which is about mass, weight, and density. So in this unit, we will discuss about these three quantities, three physical quantities. What is mass, what is weight, and what is difference between mass and weight, and also what is the relation with mass and density. So first of all, what is mass? Mass is the quantity of matter in a body. The quantity of matter in a body is called mass, and mass of an object cannot be changed by changing the location, by changing the shape, as well as with speed. If objects are moving with speed comparable to less than the speed of light, if objects are moving with speed less than speed of light, then object's mass cannot be changed. Similarly, by changing the location, for example, if there is a wooden block whose mass is 1 kg on the surface of Earth, so the mass of the wooden block will remain same if we measure the mass of object on the surface of moon. So by changing the location, mass of an object cannot be changed. Similarly, by changing the shape or speed, there will be no effect on the mass of an object because it is actually the quantity of matter which is composed in a body. SI unit of mass is kilogram. represented by kg, whereas the smaller unit is gram, and 1 kg is always equal to 1000 gram, and the larger unit is ton, and 1 ton is equal to 1000 kg. So these are units of mass, whereas SI unit is kilogram. By nature, mass is a scalar quantity and it requires only magnitude for its complete description with proper unit. There is no need to mention direction for mass. And there are some measuring instruments with the help of which we can measure the mass of an object. Number one is sliding mass balance. So by using this sliding mass balance, we can measure the mass of an object by putting that object on the top pan, and by adjusting the scale, we can find the mass of given objects with the help of the sliding mass balance. And the other measuring instrument is electronic balance. And with the help of this electronic balance, we can also find the mass of an object. And this electronic balance is much accurate as compared to the sliding mass balance. ये आपको accurate result provide करेगा as compared to sliding mass balance. So this is the first topic of unit number 4. What is mass? Thank you.